So in a manner of speaking, my beginning, my roots go back to this place. I remember my grandpa had a huge house to accommodate a very large family. The kitchen was not a part of the main house then. I think it was in an annex of sorts, and that's where the food would be cooked on wood fires. My mind goes back to those days now, even as I speak to you. Look at the tiny lane. Time when people led simple lives. You didn't need roads broad enough to accommodate large cars. You probably got off the bus and you walked home. These are jackfruit.
Halsina sonte antare.
Halsina sonte. Whenever I come to Diana, my last stop when I leave is at this store. So I pick up all these things. This is the elunde. I used to eat lots of it when I was much younger. If you haven't read the title of the video, would you have guessed where we are just by looking at this visual? Well, if you're from South Canara, you certainly would have. The laterite stone wall and also the mangalore tiles is a giveaway. Alongside that mango tree and those magnificent stately coconut palms that we are in South Canara, most specifically Udupi. Sites like this are slowly but surely disappearing and making way for more modern structures to house apartments, supermarkets, malls and whatnot. I guess change is inevitable, but I only wish it happens in a manner that we still are able to retain as much as possible of this. Namaskara folks, I'm in Udupi for a couple of days on some personal work, and this time around I'm staying at a hotel whose name is an emotion for many in Udupi and also for those who may have passed through Udupi at some point in their lives. I am staying at Diana. Yes, Diana has rooms as well. It's not just a restaurant. It's an hotel which is comfortable and takes you back to the old-fashioned comfort of yesteryear. This is my room. I've got a comfortable bed, a couple of sofas and ample space. So if you're looking for a nice, clean, comfortable hotel to stay in, something slightly old-fashioned, definitely look up Diana. They only have, I think, about 18 odd rooms. And the biggest perk, the biggest incentive of them all is, of course, the fact that you are very close to Diana restaurant. I'm on the 4th floor. The restaurant is on the 2nd floor. So yesterday, by the time I drove from Bengaluru and got here, after attending to some work, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening. I didn't want to have dinner, but I couldn't resist the opportunity to go to Diana and order 2 or 3 of my favorites here and make a meal of it. The first thing that I ordered was the dahi vada, the curd vada, which is exceptional out here. The curd is nice and thick. It has that linger of sweetness. There's shards of garlic. I think there's also some seasoning of mustard seeds that go into it. The vade is nice and soft, having drenched all that luscious thickness of the yogurt. Definitely something that you must try. Not too many people know about it. The regulars know, but most of the people don't know. The other 2 dishes that I tried, everybody knows now, of course. One is the cutlet, the beetroot and vegetable cutlet. You've got to have those. I had 2 of those, and you can't leave without getting some of that old-fashioned gadbad. There are many gadbads that you will find elsewhere in the world today, but I'm told this is where the gadbad was first made in the 60s. So this gadbad that they serve here is also a hark back to the ice cream of those years. Today, of course, you get all sorts of thick, creamy sort of ice creams, but this ice cream is flavorful yet a little restrained, a little Spartan in its texture. Taste it and you'll know what I mean. So right now the agenda is to go for a stroll, soak up the Udupi vibe, the old-fashioned Udupi vibe. If you want anything which is all the good things to eat here in South Canara, that's Kashi there. His family owns this establishment. Idu eno bitter godala idu?
Houdu sir. Karela.
Karela.
Mensina bhaji.
Mensina bhaji.
Ready to eat. Idu tapioca.
Tapioca. And then of course some banana chips. I think these are peppered, these are just salted. These are jackfruit.
Halsina sonte antare.
Halsina sonte. Whenever I come to Diana, my last stop when I leave is at this store. So I pick up all these things, and they also do the macaroons here. Famous city bakery macaroons. This is the elunde. I used to eat lots of it when I was much younger. This is with the puffed rice. The mandaki laddu, as they say. Itke en kariteve now?
Corn laddu.
Corn laddu. So this is my favorite section of this store. So whenever I come here and I see Kashi, or sometimes his wife is here as well, and I go through some of these, and it always makes for interesting things to carry back home. diner, restaurant, lodging, retail store. If you want to take home delicious souvenirs, delicious memories of South Canara, you definitely have to pay a visit there. Diner retails. So the Jimny did exceedingly well on the drive yesterday. In fact, I've got a couple of drive vlogs planned, and this one is more about driving through the Ghats. So while coming in, I drove through Shiradi and I've documented the whole experience, and on my return journey, I'm going to be going via Charmadi. So do look out for that vlog. So there's a nice park here right next to the hotel, but I want to explore something a little different. Love the manner in which this giant canopy of the Arali Mara, of the tree, is almost swaddling this temple, and that's where we are headed. This is a place called Mission Compound. So the reason why this place is interesting to me is because my dad was born and raised in this area many years ago. So I spent summers when I was a little kid in and around this area. The church that you see there, which is the Basel Mission Church of Udupi, is where my folks got married, my parents got married. So in a manner of speaking, my beginning, my roots go back to this place, the Mission Compound here in Udupi. It's nice to see that the church still remains exactly the manner in which it was, although everything around it may have changed. But you still see remnants of the old architecture in the laterite walls that you will find all over South Canara. I'm trying to figure out where was my grandfather's house. I have no idea, no way of finding out. I think let's take one of the lanes inside. Well, I guess those are the instruments of change that are happening here. Old houses giving way to the ebbs of time. But I wish some things don't change as much. You can also see the ruins of what must have been some great bungalows in times gone by. Mission Compound today is prime property in Udupi. It's interesting how something like this is still left barren, in ruins. I guess not for very long. I just love this. The moss, or what must have been grass at some point, growing through the laterite and now is all withered away. Like the memories that may have once been housed in this neighbourhood. I remember my grandpa had a huge house to accommodate a very large family. I'm not going to go into the exact numbers because I don't want to embarrass my grandpa or my dad, God bless their souls, but there were many children. Let's say you could easily have fielded a football or a cricket team. So of course when you have so many kids you need a huge space, and that's what they had. A large bungalow with rooms for everybody. I still remember the kitchen was not a part of the main house then. I think it was in an annex of sorts, and that's where the food would be cooked on wood fires by the retinue of cooks and maids to serve a very large family. My mind goes back to those days now, even as I speak to you. Of course, most of the old houses have now made way for more modern bungalows. But what's interesting is that even within all this, you still have empty plots where I'm sure there were houses once and now have been razed to the ground. I guess people have traveled overseas, or maybe those who lived in these houses have passed on, and the younger generation perhaps haven't been able to return and tend to these magnificent properties. I guess also what happens over time is that as the property passes down from one generation to the next, I guess they also divide it amongst themselves. and each person has a different idea in terms of what they want to do with their property. Well, the dogs are barking at me. I guess I'm no longer welcome in this neighborhood anymore. Look at this, an old house that has perhaps withered over time. And then of course, in the midst of all that, you have buildings like these. So I think that's what happens with each neighborhood, right? We may call it different things. You may call it gentrification, you may call it change, development. But I think the aspirations of people change over time, over generations. So the manner in which, let's say, my grandpa may have been able to keep all his children together and get them excited about the manner in which they were living, I guess the generations after have not been able to do so. Right? We live in the age of nuclear families where everybody wants to do their own thing. And sometimes, well, there are both sides, there are two sides to a story always. Look at the tiny lane. Time when people led simple lives. You didn't need roads broad enough to accommodate large cars. You probably got off the bus and you walked home. Walked home to a nice delicious meal. A chicken curry, maybe a dali toy, and maybe you helped yourself to the papaya growing in your backyard for breakfast, or perhaps some bananas. It's interesting though to see that you have, let's say, right next to a property which has a slightly modernish sort of a bungalow, you have a smaller house that is probably not been kept well. It's old, but not old and cared for. It's old and withered away. And I guess this also happens because properties get divided. Maybe one person does well and he's able to look after his property well, the other person isn't, and therefore the property falls into a bit of disrepair. And you see that in many of these old areas. And I guess many of these properties also have memories for those who live within them. So I guess sometimes when you change things around too much, at a certain level you lose those memories. And we always say the good old days, right? So we hark back to the good old days always. I guess these properties, these places too, are a reminder of that. And that's why people don't want to let go. But that proportion of people is far and few now. Not because they don't want to let go, but there are so many compulsions that arise. Old properties are not the most easiest to look after. It's always difficult to maintain something that is old, then build something new. And I guess the generations that come are perhaps not as emotional about things like these. And therefore, you see this. And I think somewhere in this evolution from large families to smaller nuclear families, we've built walls. We've built walls that are perhaps too high to climb or too wide for relationships to seep across. I think that's the tragic irony of life. Well, that's it for this vlog. I hope you found this morning in Udupi interesting. A short walk through Mission Compound, or to be more apt, through Memory Lane. I think it's always nice to revisit old memories, revisit where we come from every once in a while, because in this fast changing world where life seems to hurry us up, it's always nice to stop and take pause and reflect back on where we come from. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.